Oh, wow.
This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening
Thank you,
answer.
Lisa.
You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory.
Wow.
How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Donald Trump is already melting down on Truth Social, saying big boy press conference. Crooked Joe begins his big boy press conference. He's already melting down.
Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea we're sitting around, this is where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around, more children are killed by a bullet
Damn.
than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing?
True.
What are we doing?
Let's go, Biden.
We got a candidate saying, promise the NRA, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. You got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do.
Tell him,
still.
Joe.
And I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And by the way, I'll end this. Well, I'm not going to do that. Haley has to come up too. But I remember I made a speech on democracy in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And I'm not being critical, just observing. The bulk of the press said, what the hell is he talking about that for? Democracy. You did. Democracy's not an issue.
He's funny.
Democracy's not an issue. Except the polling data showed 60% of the people knew I was right, thought I was right. I'm not asking you a question. You don't have to answer, obviously. But do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court?
Yeah.
Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025?
Let's go.
Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education?
Yep.
Make sure, I mean,
If he just said that during the
we've
debate.
never been here
If he just
before.
said that during the debate.
And that's the other reason why I didn't, you say, hand
I'll
off
get
to
over
another
it.
generation. I've got to finish this job.
Yep.
I've got to finish this job.
On message.
Because there's so much at stake. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Come
So let's
on.
start.
He did that like 2 times.
Secondly,
He did that with Putin and
the
Zelensky
idea-
earlier.
I served in the Senate a long time.
Yeah, we know.
The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the
he did
ticket
that twice in
is
one
not
day.
unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go.
Yeah, he can
in this
come back.
campaign.
He can come back, guys.
And so I'm just going to keep moving, and because look, I got more work to do. We've got more work to finish.
That's the
There's
message.
so much. We've made so much progress.
That's the
Think
message.
about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world. Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy.
True.
We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million. I mean, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. Their prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic.
Okay, I know he slipped up with the Trump thing, but he is on message right now. He is looking forward. How is he gonna navigate our country through a second term? How has he helped us throughout his first term? This is the message. This is the message.
They're coming down, and so I'm optimistic about where things are going. It's time things get back in order a little bit. It's time, for example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase of corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes are limited to 5%. We're going to make a lot of changes that I've been talking about because we're going to continue to grow this economy. And by the way, I know, remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union. Well, guess what? I've been the most pro-union labor president in history.
Yep.
Not a joke. And guess what?
Not
We
a
had the
joke.
Treasury Department do a study. When unions do better, everybody does better.
That was a little creepy, but it's
Everybody does better. And we talk about how...
You know the MAGAs are going to clip that up. I think he's right. What he's saying is factually right, but MAGA's going to clip the hell out of that. I know they
example, when I went... Remember when we talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States?
He speaks the
truth.
truth.
Used to be 40% of the industry. We invented the chip. 40% of the industry was in the United States. And former presidents decided that the best way to do it is find the cheapest labor in the world, send the product over there, and import what the product was. And so what I do, I was told not to go over to Europe, to Asia, including Europe, but Asia. And I remember...
He's doing well enough to justify staying in the race, but not well enough to like noticeably improve his polls. That's the problem.
South Korea.
He needs a really great performance.
Convincing them to invest $20 billion in the United States to build computer chip factories.
Yep.
And I asked why when they finally decided to do it. And the answer was because you have the safest economy in the world, and you have the best workers in the world.
He's finally flexing his economy in his endorsements a little bit more like Donald Trump does.
I'm sorry, Zeke Miller, Associated Press.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two questions for you. First, on the NATO summit, President Zelensky, in your meeting with him, he pressed you to lift your limitations on the Ukrainian use of American weapons.
Okay, a new question.
Saying that, in his public remarks afterwards, saying that Ukraine cannot win the war
This is a great
unless those
question.
limitations are lifted. Are you reconsidering your position on that? And then secondly, following up on Felicia's question there, leaders of your own party have said that they're not worried about that debate. They're worried about the next bad night and the bad night after that.
Oh my God.
How can you reassure the American people that you are up to the task and that there won't be more bad nights at a debate stage or somewhere else?
First thing about Zelensky asking for the ability to strike deep into Russia.
That's a good question, though.
We've allowed Zelensky to use American weapons in the near term and the near or abroad into Russia. Whether or not he should be attacked. For example, should Zelensky, he's not, but if he had the capacity to strike Moscow, strike the Kremlin, would that make sense? It wouldn't. The question is, what's the best use of the weaponry he has and the weaponry we're getting to him? I've gotten him more long-range capacity as well as defensive capacity. And so our military is where I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. And we're making a day-to-day basis on what they should and shouldn't go, how far they should go in. That's a logical thing to do. Second question related to
bad nights, sir. How can you reassure the American people that you won't have more bad nights, whether they be on a debate stage
That was a pretty good
or
answer.
it's a matter of foreign
He
policy?
engaged with the question.
Well, I tell you what, the best way to assure them is the way I assure myself. And that is, am I getting the job done? Am I getting the job done? Can you name me somebody who's gotten more major piece of legislation passed in 3.5 years?
No.
I created 2,000 jobs just last week. So if I slow down, I can't get the job done.
He's like a rapper flexing. Like, I made 1,000 in one day. I made 3 bands just last week. So I created 2,000 jobs in the past
a
week.
sign that I shouldn't be doing it.
Yes, sir.
But there's no indication of that yet. None.
Concise answer. That was good.
What we got here?
200,000. He probably meant. Yeah. He's so bad with numbers. I don't get why people stuff him full of numbers. He's so bad at numbers. The whispering thing needs to stop too. Yeah.
Pulaski Radio.
Someone keeps spamming in chat. Why is it not better for Kamala to run as president? Please say. Because Kamala hasn't been tested on the national stage in the same way that Biden has. We don't know if we'll lose the Midwest immediately because she's a woman and she's black. That's the sad reality of it. There's a lot of reasons why it's risky. It's a risk. Both.
And how are you?
Both outcomes are
I'm
risky.
well.
This would be a good question.
The elections in the US have consequences around the world. You have pretty high standing in Europe. I just asked President Macron about you, and he said we are happy to have him as the President of the United States. But there is a concern. Many people in Poland and across Europe are worried that the former president may win the election. And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine, or push Ukraine to give up territories to Russia.
Solid question.
And yourself was warning just 2 minutes ago about it. So my question is,
get it out.
do you think that Europe will be left on its own if Donald Trump wins the election? And what's your advice to European leaders to prepare for possible US disengagement?
And do you think you're too old?
I think, how can I say this without sounding too self-serving? I'm not having any of my European allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward.
That's a good answer.
It'd be a disaster.
That's a good answer.
It'd be a disaster. I mean, I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently, where NATO, I just learned about NATO,
He
or
did
something
say
to
that.
that effect.
He absolutely said
Foreign
that.
policy has never been his strong point.
Nope.
And he seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian. That worries, as I tell you from Poland, that worries Europe.
He's praising Orban all
That
the
worries
time.
Poland. And nobody, including the people of Poland, think that if he wins in Ukraine, he's going to stop in Ukraine, that that's going to be the end of it. And so what I can
Excellent
say
answer,
is,
yep.
I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job, to make sure that Ukraine does not fall, that Ukraine succeeds, that the European alliance stays strong. You may recall, no one was talking about Finland joining NATO.
Yep.
I remember talking to Putin right after we got elected in Geneva, and he was talking about what we should do. We couldn't be in Eastern Europe, etc.
I said this earlier, but Vladimir Putin is a way better advocate for NATO than any sort of liberal Democrat can be. Vladimir Putin has united NATO more than it has been united in decades. It's not actually Mike Lindell in the chat, no.
And I said, you're looking for the Finlandization of Ukraine, as you can get the NATOization of Finland.
Meanwhile, Trump is meeting Orban
and about
today,
4
really?
weeks later, I got a call. No, that's not true. Probably 5 months later, from the president of Finland, could he come and see me? Because in my office, I invited him to the Oval Office. We sat down and talked. He said he wanted to join NATO. Could I help? And I did. It wasn't automatic. And then I got a call from the Swedes.
He's doing fine. Why doesn't he do this more often?
I beg your pardon?
Wait, someone...
And so
he should do this more
Finland,
often. He's doing
joined
fine.
NATO.
He's doing fine, just like he's doing
800
great.
mile border is a significant, and they were already allies, but they weren't part of NATO. And
He
you
called out
heard-
Trump effectively.
I think you heard maybe.
The whole thing is weaving one cohesive message about how going forward you can navigate the USA and Trump will navigate us into a dictatorship. And he kind of lost that message during the week following the debate. He was kind of defensive. He was a little bit angry when
I
reporters were
can't recall
attacking
what he
him.
said publicly in our closed meeting, but he wouldn't
This is
mind being
hoping. This is
repeated.
good. Do this more, Biden.
He said, we decided in Finland, the people of Finland decided they had to be part of NATO. It was in our interest because of the joint ability to be together, to dissuade any attack on Finland. And the same thing with Sweden. It took a lot of selling to some folks, particularly
A reporter humbled him.
in Turkey and other places, to agree to the expansion. But it expanded. And we're a hell of a lot stronger because of it. We're more secure because of it. And by the way, I was able to get 50 other nations, 50, to support Ukraine. 50.
Yep. Biden has a deeper understanding of international relations and the dynamic between different countries' economies than Donald Trump has an understanding of anything, ever. Donald Trump has no understanding of any of this. I say this all the time, but you sit them down, you quiz them about Russia, about China, about Israel, about Palestine. Biden runs laps around Donald Trump.
To do A, B, C, or D, or not to do certain things. What's happened is we had a long discussion about what we cannot we have to make clear China has to understand
Biden
that
is
if they
definitely
are
smart.
supplying Russia with information and capacity, along with working with North Korea and others to help Russia in armament, that they're not going to benefit economically as a consequence of that by getting the kind of investment they're looking for. And so, for example, we're in a situation where and we've reestablished direct contact with China after that, remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down?
Yep,
all of a sudden thing came to an end. Well, we set up a new mechanism. There's a direct line between Xi and me, and our military has direct access to one another, and they contact one another when we have problems. The issue is that we have to make sure that Xi understands there's a price to pay for undercutting both the Pacific Basin as well as Europe, and as it relates to Russia and dealing with Ukraine.
He's smart as hell.
And so,
Smart man.
for example.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of your colleagues, Democrats on the Hill, are watching tonight as they assess what they want to say about your candidacy. I'm wondering how you're thinking of this right now. It seems like your answer is clear, but they're watching how things go tonight, tomorrow in Michigan, next week in Texas and Nevada. Are you thinking that way about whether how the next week or two goes would inform your...
Am I using that way, you said?
Are you thinking that way about how the next 2 weeks go? Will that affect your decision, or are you fully determined on running in November as the party's nominee?
He's going to say he's fully
determined on
determined.
running,
Yeah,
but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. Let me
Thank you, Brennan, for the dono.
see them out. You know, for the longest time it was, you know, Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to, anyway. And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I think we've done over 20 major events, from Wisconsin to North Carolina to demonstrate that I'm going out in the areas where we think we can win, where we can persuade people to move our way, or people are already there. And here, look, the other thing is, we have the most extensive campaign organization of anybody's had in a long, long time. We have well over 1,000 volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, making tens of thousands of phone calls. We have headquarters, I forget exactly how many, I want to cite a number and then find out I'm off, but we have scores of headquarters.
He keeps doing that now. He keeps cushioning himself and saying, don't quote me on this. I don't want to be wrong. By the way, if you're on the stream, join the Adam Mockler subreddit. Link in chat to the Adam Mockler subreddit. We do a lot of facts, Project 2025 research on the Adam Mockler subreddit.
And all the toss-up states, we're organized, we're moving, and that's awful hard to replace in the near term. And so, and here's the other thing. I was in the Senate a long time. Very proud of what I've done in the Senate. I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time, and I was chairman or ranking member and chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be going down to the Johnson Library. Anyway, I'm going to be going around making the case of the things that I think we have to finish, and how we can't afford to lose what we've done or backslide on civil rights, civil liberties, women's rights. There's that little button we have. Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea, we're sitting around, this is where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around, more children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing?
True.
What are we doing?
Let's go, Biden.
We got a candidate saying, promise the NRA, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. You got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do.
Tell him, Joe.
And I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And by the way,